Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. So nice to be with you again here today. Well, let's get straight to part 2 of our interview with Dr. Janice Hughes. Well, let me ask you this. There's a lot of resources available, maybe too many now because things get lost in the noise. But have you heard of anything recently that is a great resource for chiropractors, a website, an app, a tool that they can use to integrate into their practice and have greater productivity in any form?
Well, the beauty is with technology, the resources, and you're right, though, we've got to watch to avoid the bombardment. And I'll suggest to most people that if they took even half the time they spend on Facebook and actually put it into strong resources, then that's where you're going to get more of that success culture. To me, Facebook right now is a lot like in the old days newspapers, and I had a great mentor say to me, stop reading newspapers, stop buying into all of that, focus on success. So I think a little bit is to stop that black hole of getting sucked into, just updates and postings and what everybody's up to. And don't get me wrong, there can be some great little videos and clips, but there's a lot of dribble there too. Now, the beauty of then using the internet, or websites, there's a lot of free resources, TEDx, TED Talks, those are free. And so the ability to look or focus on something like that every week, there's, again, you name the person, Robin Sharma, he has some blog videos, some vlogs. Gary Vaynerchuk, I love that guy. He had always done the wine stuff, but he's completely morphed himself into, just success principles and action steps. And, so again, a lot of these are out there and available. And so I'm not suggesting you also think, now I've got to just get sucked into all of that. Even choosing one resource and watching one of their blogs or videos per week.
I want to touch on a couple of things you mentioned there. The first one is limit your exposure to the news. And I read this in a book, probably 10 years ago. And I thought, wait a second. I'm a smart person. I want to stay informed, but it turns out there's a whole lot of time to be wasted in that. And you can find out bullet point chunks of information, or there are people who are, make it their hobby to be in the know, or their job even. And really, both my wife and I have shifted over the last decade away from wasting too much time with that. And, there's no shortage of Netflix shows that you can binge watch as well. So less time on all of those, Facebook, TV, and media, I think really has allowed us to gather our thoughts and focus on what's important and what we should be doing.
Absolutely. Like DeMartini, all those years ago as a young practitioner, he to really, work with him, he had us ban that stuff. And a lot of people said, well, aren't you going to be so out of touch? And I used to say, look, I see hundreds of people in the clinic. If there's a major news thing, I'm going to hear it from somebody. Now that I more travel, do these different projects, I subscribe to, it's called the Skim, and the Skim is it's a daily synopsis of things going on yesterday or stuff in the news. And, it's again, you can just do the highlights and they've summarized it brilliantly. Like there are a lot of those potential resources.
Well, let's talk briefly about some of your 28 laws of chiropractic attractability.
Sure. What ones would you like to talk about?
Oh.
So just for anybody listening, 28 laws is, years ago as I started doing a lot more speaking in the profession, around consciousness, I had been really fortunate I trained through Coach University at a time where there was really the founder of it, Thomas Leonard, and he's really called the founder of this thing called the coaching, profession. And Thomas did a lot of podcasts and work with us, again, like helping to hone our message or take a whole bunch of concepts and how do you create simple point forms or little formulas, and so that is kind of where I birthed this thing called the 28 Laws of Attractability. And it was something that I taught in different formats. There's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of quantum physics behind that idea of the law of attractability. And so then I came up with different categories, of these laws, so really I created 7 categories and then there's multiple laws in each of those categories. So as an example, like category number 1 at the very top of all of this is it's about you as the person, the I am, things like your affirmations, and so that's where some of the laws in that category are about focusing on yourself, becoming incredibly and banning the word selfish and becoming more self-full. Be really in the moment, be very present, and that applies to our practice, but it applies to life. See the perfection in the present time, because a lot of us are living in the past or the future, have a vision. So there are a number of kind of these 28 laws, and anybody, you can kind of check out, there's a bunch of different audios that I've done on that, or by all means, somebody can email me and I'm happy to send them sort of just a little short synopsis of the 28 laws of attractability, but that's really where it stemmed from, is how to come up with some of these, I'll call the laws, these guiding principles, things that I was working on, and then was putting into a format to be able to share and teach with other people.
I've got to tell you, the science geek in me loves the quantum physics part of it. And I'll tell you, I'm always looking for the real world rational explanation for a lot of the things that we seem to see in life, like the law of attraction, for example. And the concept of entanglement, quantum entanglement, fascinates me. The idea that you can, have one particle over here vibrate and you can have the same thing in this other particle over here. And then no matter what distance you put those two apart, one is going to affect the other one. And I think Einstein called it spooky control from afar or something like that. But it really is fascinating. So I think that's really interesting how you've integrated that into those laws.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think that the trap is to ensure that we don't get, I'm going to say, too heady about the science or too deep into it all. The same thing, how can you stay focused on what are a few of the simple pieces or principles? What are some of the next simplest action steps? So you notice that I go a lot for simplicity.
Well, while we're on that topic, what are 3 specific must-do action steps that a struggling practitioner should start doing tomorrow?
The first, I'm going to go back to what we had talked about, is, control your mindset, affirmations, writing or talking about, any counterpoint to a negative. If you've got a limiting negative self-talk, self-belief, shift that. Even if it's that, you can't say, oh, everything's great, and pretend that you're going to fake that, but it could be that I'm growing better and better every day in every way. And starting to say something simple like that for yourself. The second thing would be that question I said, what is your next simplest action step? Actions, each day in the practice. Who could I talk to? Can I go next door and meet and greet someone there at their business or tell them a little bit of who I am? The third thing for me would be role playing. role playing, practicing some of your communication skills, connecting with somebody else that you can do a little bit of role playing. Often there's now in schools, talking the tick, all the different groups, that you can get involved with. That's really what it is. It's role playing. If I could add a fourth, so those are my top three, but if I could add a fourth is, what are you reading? What are you filling your mind up with? If it's huge struggles with, finances at this point, to me, the Bible is richest man in Babylon. Kind of seeing that there's a bigger vision that you can get there. And it's a simple read and a simple parable. By all means, I'm happy to send you, or you can make it available for your listeners. I did an ebook with a financial planner all about inspired wealth and values-driven concepts around money. And we just really took my love of the laws of attraction and blended that with finances and financial principles.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to shift to success and failure in general. And you've had obviously a lot of success in your life, but we learn even more from our failures. Can you share with us any failures and some of the lessons you learned from those failures?
Oh, I talk to my sons all the time about it. I have three sons, and they range from just about 19 to 27. And I just talk about thinking differently about, is something really a failure, or is it just an obstacle and a learning opportunity? Because I don't know anyone that has not had challenges, or in the so-called definition of it, failed at something regularly, and I've got my youngest, in college, and I'm letting him know about my shock of, first chem college exam, and getting 52% on it, and I could say that it's, that yes, everyone struggled, but it was like that. Wow. So it helped me course correct, how could I learn how to learn all that volume of material differently, and it's so abundant in my life. An example I could give is that in some ways, one of the mistakes I made was actually leaving private practice. For me, I was masterful at practice. I ran a practice I loved, people I loved, and in hindsight, part of me went, what the heck was I doing? It probably at that point, if I'd had maybe some different input or guidance, I may have, say, gone down to practicing a couple days a week, letting my associate who bought it, say, be the owner and me be the associate while I did these other projects. So then kind of questioning, well, what's next? But again, was that really a failure? Was that really a problem? So the short answer is no. So I can give you so many examples. It's unbelievable. And that's what I really try to, in a laughing way, bring to other chiropractors when I do talks or go to life and just say, yeah, literally, it's my question is, how many times did I fail or, create a mess today? How many times did I do it this week? And it's so what? I can either get mired in it, or I can say, okay, how do I regroup around this?
Well, I guess in a sense, the big lesson that you learned is that these aren't in fact mistakes. They're learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
Well, when you think of the word successful, who do you think of and why?
I think about my nephews, my young nephews, because they are just this incredible joie de vivre. They're so into, everything. I mean, they can see a bug, and for Lord's sakes, they can get a little magnifying glass and spend, an hour looking at this bug, and so on my board of directors, I have a real variety of people that I see these success principles in. My husband is incredibly successful in how he balances his life. He's really focused on that downtime, exercise growth time. He loves to road cycle. And, me as a driver, for me, that's really successful to be able to watch him, because that's constantly what I had to challenge. Was I'd go do some other work or adjust some more people or do another project instead of necessarily, going to the gym or doing my exercise. Out in the profession and in the business world, I'm really fortunate. The autism project that I work on, our CEO is what I consider the smartest woman. Now, she's a chiropractor, the smartest person that I know. And her tenacity and willingness to do this project, I'm so fortunate to be around her. As I said, for people, find through things like TED Talks or, some of these different, websites of authors and speakers, find some of the resources so that you can find your models. It's kind of less for me about who mine are and more how do each of you find some great models to watch.
Well, you touched on affirmations as part of your secret sauce for success. Do you have any daily rituals or habits or anything else you do every day?
Yeah. Literally some type of movement. I love the Apple Watch. Thought I would never be into another piece of technology, but it was gifted to me. And I laugh because one of the things as a driver, I can sit at a computer now or zoom in on a project and suddenly be spending way too many hours doing that. And, movement, some kind of movement. And the Apple Watch, I can program it to have it, beat me to make sure I'm standing. I can set movement goals every day. So everybody, you might call that, some of you, it might be pure exercise, go to the gym, run, bike, whatever that is. But, just that ability to have some of that time and energy, some outdoor time for me, a breath of fresh air, and pattern interrupting, getting really stuck in my own brain. So those are things for me, and that watching my self-talk, and I look everywhere in my life to make distinctions. I really, this year I'm focusing on a distinction between the words worry versus concern. I have sons right now all over the world. One's in the South Pacific. He's a helicopter pilot. And, if you're not careful, you can get caught up in a little bit of that worry energy. And, so for me, it's using affirmations to label that I can be concerned, but affirm what a fabulous pilot he is and the things that I choose to focus on every day. So for me, it's a lot of that. The things I work on are all about my mindset, or exercise and movement to allow me to be more balanced and have that stronger mindset.
Well, this interview is moving into its final thoughts. And with that, I want to ask you a couple more questions. You mentioned The Richest Man in Babylon. Do you have any other reading recommendations?
There's so many. There's, obviously as we lost Wayne Dyer, there's an interesting book, and I can't think where I saw this, but I ordered it. It's called Being in Balance, and it's 9 principles for creating habits to match your desires. And it's a lovely, quick little read, and I often like to use, simple things, for realizing that, there's these resources. The library is a great resource. There's a book called The Go-Giver. It's a little story about a powerful business idea. My most recent favorite is called Leave Your Legacy. It's by Ben Newman, and it's the power to unleash your greatness. So again, I, could go on and on and on about these little, books and parables, because I think, it's really fueling your brain reading. I love to fiction read. A mentor of mine, Larry Markson, used to give me a hard time because a lot of times when we get so into our success culture and books, we forget that we could read pure fiction, and the things that we can learn in that. So find a favorite fiction author and, read a fun book, read something that you're absolutely loving and enjoying.
Yeah, a little rest, relaxation, and recharge never hurts.
Absolutely.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Don't take myself so seriously.
That's good. I think we could all benefit from that.
Yeah, that because again, remember, I'm a type A driver personality, used to run a really big booming practice. Before you know it, you could get caught in, reading your own press releases, or buying into your own hype. And, for me, my whole life journey is just not taking myself so damn seriously. And that was a business advisor that gave me that. And, really also talked about even numbers in a day or numbers in a little phase. Like, don't take it so seriously. Like, step away from it. Look at it in the bigger scope of things. So, that fits personally and in business.
We're going to link to the books you recommended and a lot of the things you've talked about in this interview in the show notes. What's the best way for people to contact you or find out more about you and what you're involved in?
The easiest is, let me even just give people my personal email, is Janice_Hughes@Comcast.net. And I will make sure, Richard, that you have that. And then, the ebook, I'm happy to give, complimentary copy of the ebook, the Inspired Wealth book to people. A lot of times, I have a previous website that is by no means new, but it's got a bunch of different things that I have expertise in. And it's the number 2, it's 2inspireonline.com.
All right. Well, we will list all those, as I said, in the show notes. Dr. Janice Hughes, thank you so much for spending some of your time with us here today.
Thank you for having me, and much success to everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.